Welcome to Tapestry Feminine Collective Podcast. Join us as we weave a new legacy of feminine leadership with voices from visionary women around the world. I'm your host, Arlia Hoffman. Welcome, everyone. This is Arlia, and you're listening to the Tapestry Feminine Collective Podcast, and now you're watching it too. We have a very special show today. I am joined by three beautiful women, and the four of us together make up the Tapestry Feminine Collective Executive Council. And I'm going to start with introductions. We have Jennifer Lauren.
Hi.
Amy Gernot. And Jacqueline Robinson, Creative Director and Founder of Tapestry Feminine Collective. And as a bit of review, into 2023, Tapestry presented an 11/11 online experience. And after the beginning of 2024, Jacqueline pulled together several of us to create a council for herself, for guidance for the Tapestry Feminine Collective, for all sorts of things, the sense of feminine community and planning and connection. As 2024 moved along, we conceived and generated another experience for 11/11 called the Golden Gala. Well, this is October. We're recording on October 30th, 2024, and there is no gala. And so we wanted to do several things. We wanted to present to you the council and how we work and what that looks like for women to be in community and collaborate, and to talk about what that process was for us as a council to plan such an extraordinary and gorgeous event and then it not happen. In the wider world of spirituality and coaching and feminine leaders, that's not something you see very much of. Oh, I've canceled my event. Let me tell you why. I mean, that's not something you see a lot of. And even if someone does say that, it's challenging to do that in a way that does not own any guilt or shame or embarrassment about why plans didn't manifest. And as we were going through this process, I was like, everyone, all spiritual leaders and women really could benefit from hearing and seeing our process, because we all experience that. We all experience creativity that might not manifest, or it changes form, or we get led in a completely different direction. That's so completely normal and natural, maybe not according to our society, but particularly for spiritual women who are so internally guided. That's essential that we learn how to flow with what is and as the energy shifts. So that's my preface to say, here we are. There is no Golden Gala, and we're here to talk about that flow of creativity, who we are as a group, and how this year has evolved for us. So I'm going to begin with Jacqueline Robinson. Morning, Jacqueline.
Good morning. Congratulations.
Tell us a little bit about you. And I mean, people on Tapestry Feminine Collective Podcast know a lot about you, but just recap who you are and a little bit about Tapestry and the council.
Thank you, Arlia. I love how you landed this sort of preface into our conversation. And that is a theme that will be so intricately interwoven in all of what we will share here. So I am Jacqueline, and the vision for Tapestry landed in my field clean and clear and very direct and precise for what I was to create in partnership and collaboration with, I think it ended up being almost 20 women, more than 20 women, because we had artists in the boutique as well for 2023. My everyday reality is that I am a wife of almost 33 years. I am a mother of 3 adult children, and I am a business owner, an intimacy coach, and moving into ancestral mediumship and working intimately with women to really know who they are at the root, which is another piece that has impacted the creation of the gala and ultimately the cancellation of the gala for this year. What I love about this conversation today is a fundamental piece of who I am and how I work is unlocking those secret hidden places that have lived within the psyche and the cellular biology and the soul imprint of a woman, of a human. And because of the hiding away of things that don't look so good, may not feel so pleasant, may be covered over with shame or failure, we become conditioned and adjusted to being something else we're not. So this conversation, this level of raw, intimate visibility and in fact exposure is key, I feel, not only to Tapestry and what we are about, which is the deep reverence and honoring of feminine energy as she is in evolution and transition on this planet. And also a place that with time and intentional building and anchoring is forming into a beautiful community for women, a place of resource for women, and becoming really a landing place as we move into a new age of what it is to be a woman, what it is to hold our own feminine energy, and how we are in the collective consciousness of the mystical feminine, as well as the very grounded, earthy, everyday life. Maybe it's a little more mundane sometimes, pieces of holding that feminine essence, that mystical quality, and yet being firmly planted and rooted and landed within ourselves, in creation, and upon this planet. Welcome. Welcome. We have a lot to share today, and I love these women.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I also want our other 2 guests to really give a short introduction to what they do, because it becomes relevant to what we're going to talk about. Amy Gernot, let's start with you and give us a little bit about you and your work.
Hello, everyone. I am so looking forward to this conversation today. As always, when we get together, the 4 of us, magic just happens. So I can't wait to just be a part of that and be able to share what goes on behind the scenes with us. So I own a company called Amy G Vitality. It is Body Wise Woman is the work that I do. And it is largely for women who are in the transition, who are in transitions, especially in the perimenopause transition, and understanding how to honor their body, honor the cycles and seasons of their body, and to really have a very deep, intimate relationship with the wisdom that the body has for them, and how that wisdom is a part of everything that we do, and that the body is designed to be an aspect of that. So that's largely what I do. It's a wonderful work. It is the slowing down to understand the seasons that we go through as women, which is going to be, I think, woven into this conversation of what seasons look like. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. You are going to be gifted with amazing women today. I also love, love, love these women, and am so blessed and grateful that I have the relationships that I have with them. So welcome. Happy you're here.
Thank you, Amy. And Jennifer Lauren.
Yes. Hi, my name is Jennifer Lauren. I am an artist and creative strategist, but I also have a unique I would say maybe relationship with technology that helps me assist my elder peers and women who would like to pass down their collective feminine intelligence and pass that on in a, I would say, like accessible way to the next generation and future generations beyond. So I have really enjoyed being involved with these women because I have, well, one, been touched by much of their work over the last decade and some more recently, but it has evolved to the way that I can claim my own creative power. And I think being able to cooperate with women at this level is incredible for, and frankly, uncommon for many women my age and even older. So thank you again for being here. And I'm so grateful to extend the opportunity to have you all witness what it is to work with women who are here with the vision first and foremost, and the connection that results therefrom. Yeah.
Beautiful. We're so glad you're here, Jennifer.
Thank you.
As for me, I'm Arlia Hoffman, a podcast producer and coach, also a spiritual teacher, and also a little techie on the side. So I've known Jacqueline Robinson for eons and these other women for several years. And I think together we make an incredible team. Jacqueline, let's talk about the formation of the idea for the Golden Gala. What do you recall about it?
Oh, I recall about it. I recall about it. It was sometime in the spring, much like last year, when the seed for the 11/11 experience dropped in. And Amy and I were actually having a conversation. The energy and then the word gala dropped in deeply. And if I recall correctly, Amy had encountered it separately somewhere in the days before our conversation. Something like it, or the word was in my field. And so when we had a conversation and it showed up, that was number 3. And any woman with a little witchy woo or on the side of dropping into the more light divinity understands that 3 is a very mystical number. And so it felt like green light. This is the green light. We're going to plan a gala. And this gala, immediately, when Amy and I were speaking, we didn't plan out a lot, but we knew the seed of conception was there. And we understood this gala was the arrival, the celebration, and in some ways, and I want to qualify this when I say it, in some ways, like my hands moving from root up the body to crown, we felt it and we saw it as, quote, her crowning moment of really arriving. There's a nugget I'm going to share later that I can now see in hindsight 2020 why that didn't work. But that was the premise of the conception point, to really see women, to have this be a weekend of not just come to the spa and have a retreat, but come and be fed and also come and be inspired. There would be business elements that would support her in expanding in that capacity. There would be soul elements. There would be initiatory pieces. There would be beautiful dancing and celebration and fun, very enchanted. That was the inception point of the gala.
I remember how excited I was about it too, because as we began to develop it and incorporate different pieces, it did feel like a gorgeous celebration of the spirituality and the depth and the connection and the sisterhood, and then gala celebration on top of that as the culmination of it. It just was a really gorgeous idea. Amy, what were your thoughts as it was developing?
Really similar, just this arrival point for women. And when you work intimately with women, as all of us actually do, and you watch all these pieces come together, and then there's these so many moments of arrival during the course of our lifetime. We have all these moments where we're arriving. And the feeling of the celebration of that, and also the coming together in the community of women, not coming together because we need to be saved or we need to save each other, but really coming in this beautiful collaboration and community where we are coming in powerful as ourselves, number one, and the women coming in powerful as they are, and then what that creates. And I kept seeing, as we were talking about it, like just all these beacons of light, like every woman that come in was just like a light post and just beaming out. And all of us then together just became this huge explosion of light. And just the feeling as we went along and all of these pieces coming in and coming together. And it was almost like a vortex. As I see it, it's like pieces were coming in, and then pieces were coming in, and pieces were coming in, and it just kept moving and moving and spiraling as we brought things in, discarded things, brought things in, discarded things, as we kept just in this beautiful refinement process that I have never experienced when working with other people and other women, just specifically, of being okay with discarding the things that we got super excited about in a moment. And then as the refinement process happened, we're like, yeah, no, that doesn't fit anymore. So we're going to just say bye. And it didn't matter whose idea it was. Nobody was offended if their idea was not accepted. It was a very open space to be direct with each other, direct with ourselves, and very honest about what felt good, what didn't feel good, what didn't make sense, but maybe from a standpoint of it didn't make sense in the moment, but then as we percolated on it, it became very clear. So the whole experience as we got started that's what it felt like to me, just this vortex of spinning and working together and weaving together and being okay with pulling threads out that didn't work and moving on, there was no hangups on a part that we were like super excited about or not super excited about. And that was the beauty of the beginning of this process, and maintained that way through the entirety of us working through this together. And I think there's something really profound to be said about that we were able to stay the course with each other through this entire process. And there was no meltdowns, like as far as us getting really upset with each other. That way, there were meltdowns. Like, let's just be honest, there were meltdowns, but in that way
I was about
of
to say
processing,
they did exist.
there were meltdowns. Yeah, there were meltdowns in the way of us processing what was going on in our own lives as we came together, but nothing that collapsed the process, nothing that collapsed us as a group. And I think that was a really beautiful thing to be a part of.
I agree. And I was about to say, well, it was because we all just came with this sense of trust in each other. And that was real. That is real. Trust is earned and develops, but it's a very secure foundation that we have. But the other piece that occurred to me as you were talking is that we also, therefore, trusted the process within each woman. We trusted her intuition. We trusted her hits. We trusted her thoughts and her intelligence, whatever we brought to it. And so it wasn't always relying on one person's opinion. We were dancing with everybody's intuition to find that which really rose and resonated the most for us as a group, and the transcendent piece of whatever the spirit of tapestry, as we've called it, as it was speaking to each of us and how it coalesced. Jennifer Lauren, we developed these plans. First, I want to know your thoughts about it, but also I want you to talk about really as the engine of manifestation, kind of, for the Tapestry Gala. It was probably a very unique experience for you to really be creating a lot of the materials we were using and translating that energy into form.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll speak to this a little bit because we've already talked about how the energy of tapestry really helped to shape the process, and we were just tracking it. But what I love about this is, in terms of pottery, I would say this a lot. Like, sometimes you sit down at the wheel to make what you think is going to be a mug, but when hands meet clay, that's not always what happens. And so in the same way, I felt like it's a pretty common practice for me as an artist, especially when I work with all of these elements, earth, air, fire, water, to understand that there are some pieces that are not going to survive me and two fires through a kiln. And so when it came to tapestry, and especially with the insight and the support of several other women, it felt like, okay, I'm not attached to anything. I would love to help, obviously, translate the yeses and the nos, and like almost take raw clay or raw material, as we were speaking it, into form, and kind of use the yeses and the nos to really shape that into the sculpture of what became ultimately the Golden Gala's marketing material. And it was absolutely pleasure for me to do so. And I still, to this day, have no regret that the event never happened, because for me, it did. It happened in the creation of these assets. And it was such a beautiful experience to be able, again, to collaborate as an artist in this space, and to feel like I certainly was imbuing my own magic here, but I was also alchemizing all of the magic and insights I was getting from the women you see here. And it just, to me, it was a beautiful masterpiece that we created ultimately with the marketing material. And for me, it was a really, like, it was just a burst of pride, honestly. So I would have loved to be able to share that experience. And I think in a lot of ways, that's ultimately what we were inviting women into with the Golden Gala, was like this co-creative experience that we are like actually embodying and practicing right here, right now, is how we want to share this come time for the Golden Gala. And I loved the Golden Gala, especially because it felt for me very mature. I see a lot, and I know we talked about this in the process, but it was, I remember one of my first questions was like, well, are we going to invite our men for this? Like, when I hear gala, I think, I've been to a gala, it's like a corporate fundraiser. And how are we going to invite women into what is a non-corporate environment that is creative and also nurturing and supportive? And so there was a lot of, at least for me, a lot of intrigue and mystique around what this really could become and what it could look like. And I think for artists and mystics alike, we are very visual, both like internally and otherwise, but it's easy for us to conceive these really grand images. And then to really capture that in a feeling, I think is ultimately the gift, because often what we think something should look like is sometimes what we attach ourselves to, but ultimately what we're trying to create, I think, is the feeling, the sensation of what that was. So
I want to piggyback on that. On that because yes, you were talking about attachment, but I remember during the process looking at you just in wonder, like, oh my gosh, she's just willing to change these on the fly. She's not attached to anything. And until you said that, I hadn't connected it back to your pottery. But you're absolutely right. When you're in that creative process, you really, I mean, you can get attached, but you have to learn not to, because anything can happen to it. You get led in a different direction, like a mug becomes a bowl, or it gets destroyed in the kiln. I'm like, that muscle in you really created awe for me. It's like, wow, she's just able to, like, how they say about authors talk about killing their babies, just be able to let something go if it doesn't fit, or it's not right, or it needs to be this, or we're going this direction. So yeah, I was, as you were talking, like, oh, that's why it was so easy for her.
I would add in, I actually made a note as Jen was speaking about her level of enthusiasm and inspiration. And those could be very just average, simple words, but she's considerably younger than the three of us. Like, not considerably, like we're 80, but, you know, in terms of life and the structure of what has been lived and what is known and what is lived now. Jen came in, and I have two pieces about this. One, she didn't miss a beat. She didn't miss a beat. And as an older woman who it changes as we navigate menopause and are ripening into a different stage of life, I find my approach to creativity is much different. And I recognize that enthusiasm for, oh, I'm so excited. I'm just going to do it right now. And at this place in my life, I'm so excited and I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to have a minute. So I have a deep appreciation of that. And the second piece I'll just drop in regards to Jen is one of the most exquisite, beautiful things in the nature of the four of us is here is a younger woman coming in full recognition of her elders, in full honoring, and with a very open desire to, the word I have is grok. It's like to just absorb the wisdom and the maturity and the movement and the voice of the elders in her field. And we, of course, as the elders in the space, understood far back at the inception and birthing of Tapestry in 2023 that this is an integral piece, is being able to offer a way for the next generations to be interwoven and receive the stories and the lineage and the wisdom and the soul and the medicine of the elders. And I have shivers down the back of my neck. Like, I have such a deep, rich appreciation of the word that comes to mind is Jen's humility, but it's more of an open-hearted, pure innocence to be able to just be present, drink in, and also maintain her own autonomy and ability to take the action. It's extraordinary. And I just really want to acknowledge that.
That piece there, I think, is something that I was able to pick up on. Each and every one of us gave ourselves permission to step into our own creative power without fear of like stepping on someone's toes or offending them. And I know Amy spoke to this to some degree. We didn't have any big major blowouts, but we also didn't let that temper us from taking up more space. And I know there were a few times I was like, do you really want me to do this? Do you really want me to step up here and do this? Because I will. And knowing that in probably before my 30s, taking up that kind of space was a lot. It demanded a lot of self-trust and certainty to some degree, and really just like understanding my own innocence so that I can just take space and come, like being so well received, I think was just a really like beautiful compliment to that practice for me. And it has changed. I mean, this whole year has changed my everything. So yeah. And by and large,
I would love to hear maybe a little bit more, just a little bit more about what you've learned in this process with the three elders, and then talk about how a little bit of the nitty gritty of how you created the materials for the gala, because it's relevant to all of our work.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm like, I feel like this is two parts.
Brace yourself.
Yeah. Right. So what I have learned in this process, and especially being among my elder women, is not only granting other women the permission of her no, like when that no is clear, it has reflected back to me so much beauty actually in my own no, which is not a rejection of you as a person or of your art as a whole or any of this. It is a refinement. It's a redirection. I think I said this in one of the early courses I taught, which is like, know means grow. Let that grow you. Letting go to let grow is part of the mantra that came out of all of this work. And then I'm sorry, Arlia, what was the second question?
Let's talk about, I'm leading you towards the work in AI, but talk about how you develop some of these materials, because we're all working in AI these days.
Yeah. Okay. So when we first started exploring these materials, of course, wanting to stay true to the energetics of Tapestry, it was going to be obviously human idea and then ultimately human refinement. But I will say that, yes, in the content and in the context of developing a strategy that the four of us could even then take again, like a raw chunk of clay and chisel out, AI certainly assisted in this development as far as the Aquarian aspects of that technology, serving the feminine in such a beautiful, like, I could go talk to AI, spit out, like, here's the mystical vision, honestly. Like, I could just talk about how I wanted it to feel and what I'm seeing in this dreamlight, surreal state. And it's going to spit back at me something that's actually a little more structured, concrete, and applicable. And it was like, for me, and this is in my own internal story, but I am astrologically a Capricorn, Cancer, like sun and moon, which are opposites. And I had felt all my life like I was either hyper rational and critical and analytical, or hyper emotional and sensitive and intuitive. And I felt all the time like it was this massive ultimatum. And in my journey with AI and technology and really owning that I actually have a skill set here, I was able then to merge the two and beautifully, like, I'm able to utilize and integrate both of these aspects of myself. And I feel that this is unique to me, given my astrology, but also not. Like, I think a lot of people feel the complexity of their human. And when they come up against AI, at least for the first time, they might be like, wow, that's really reductionist and it feels like lifeless and it has no pulse. But there is a degree of creative and I call it artistic intelligence, that when you meet AI with that artistic and creative enthusiasm, as you were saying, Jacqueline, you are met in equal part. I mean, it reflects yourself back to you. And there is, at least again, for me as an artist, it's like, even if the result I'm getting from AI is still just like raw material, like, it's not a loss to me. I have now at least got some sort of organizational structure that I can still, as an artist, reject or play with. Like, I still become the autonomous, empowered person. I'm not subject to what the AI is telling me. Simultaneously, it is unconsciously rewiring aspects of our neurocircuitry. And I think part of that is this practice of impermanence that we're talking about, where because we don't have to care what AI says, we are open to its feedback, because maybe, I know for me, it's helped me understand how I might not necessarily be communicating effectively, or how easy it could be for someone else to misunderstand me. So yes, AI has taught me how to refine my language and my communication in ways to really like anchor that ultimate message that I know is coming through in the intuitive aspects. So,
and one of the products that was created in that process was this digital magazine, which was really stunning. You and Jacqueline worked quite a bit on that.
You too, Arlia.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to talk about anything? Who's got something they want to talk about in this whole process?
I don't know that I have something specific I want to talk about, but and there will be, I'm more responsive as they come. In relation to I'll just touch on the AI piece and Jennifer's brilliance with it. And Arlia, I do know you were, even though it may have been quieter, like I see a little mouse sort of, and not that you're mousy, but that the way that
I was about to say no one's ever accused me of being a mouse.
nope. I see the mouse in the sense of you have this uncanny ability to be yourself, have impact, and it's not showy, right? It's not in your face. It's not glitzy. It's this beautiful, when I saw you this morning and just even how you have put yourself together today, it's this beautiful, fluid way of bringing forth beauty and feminine and elegance and having a level of structure beneath it. I mean, here in this conversation that we're having, I come in knowing full well you've got the structure for this particular space. And so I don't have to hold that. I hold my energy. And you have a way of doing it so effortlessly. So, with regard to the magazine, I want to acknowledge that as well. And I know you had a role that probably I didn't see a lot of it because I was engaging with Jennifer. And to the point of that gala magazine, it's worth just spending a few beautiful, intentional moments speaking of this because it is a gorgeous, in the true essence of tapestry, it is a beautiful work of art, first of all. And tapestry was founded upon the artistry of a woman, and her artistry is how she builds her business, how she loves the people in her life, how she actually literally creates art, how she structures the movements in her day. Like all of this is her artistry. So the artistry of that particular magazine, brand new creation of its kind, coming into not just tapestry, the planet, the world. And there's a piece of that Aquarian aspect that Jen touched on, that you and I spoke about in last year's episode of the podcast, speaking about Aquarian energy. And Arlia, that you actually brought forth, I think a little bit ahead of its time in your presentation for the 1111 experience. This Aquarian tone of, I have said it before and I'll say it again, being the foremothers of a new feminine consciousness on the planet is gorgeously reflected in that magazine. And for anybody listening, the magazine is still out there. You can find it on my profile. I'm sure it's on Jennifer's profile. It's in the Tapestry Feminine Collective group. It may be on Amy and Arlia's profile. Probably not Amy because let's talk about that during this conversation. Let's go there in a minute.
That's a good idea.
The gorgeousness, the richness, like we captured the essence of our creative juice for that moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it on the leading edge of technology, of the Aquarian age, of feminine consciousness, of creative edge. We touched all of that. And as I speak those words, I will sort of complete and wrap that with, that is precisely why we are not sitting here in shame and failure and what we got wrong, because I'm here to say unequivocally, we didn't get it wrong. We didn't get it wrong.
Part of me wants to be like,
The beauty of youth. I love it.
All right, Amy Gernot, let's talk about the energy of what you were experiencing and the energy you brought of this, partly this expertise of gently guiding us into how to create an event, which we were all green at, and the energy of whatever Jacqueline was just talking about.
You know what it is, Amy.
I know what you're talking about. So I'll start with the event part first. Part of what I do is bringing things out of the ethers and into the body and rooting down into like our soil, into the land. So things are very anchored. So the practical pieces, like I am very good at bridging the two together so that this is honored, but this is honored too, because I know, having been in multiple spiritual communities over the last several years, that oftentimes the body, the fleshy, is not honored. This is what is considered the most. And for me, it's the marriage of the two, the bridging of it. So a lot of that process for me was, as the grander vision was coming up, it's like pulling it down. Okay, this is part of the vision we have. What does this look like in reality? Like, what does this look like in physical form then? What are the logistical pieces that have to go along with that? Whether that's having a caterer, if we're having other speakers come in, what the setup looks like, how we bring women together in different spaces. And so a lot of the logistical pieces have to be talked about at the same time this is happening, because we want to land it so that there's a home for women to actually come to. Because if it stays up here, there's no home for the women to actually come to and have the experience. So that bridging aspect is so important, and the grounding of it into the real world is vital so that there is space and place for the magic to actually happen in the physical, which is where we want it. We're bringing that energy into the land. Go ahead, Arlia.
Pause right there and just put a pin in that. That is so vitally important in general, but particularly in this day and age, because all of this energy is streaming in. The downloads are streaming in. The environment is in some level of chaos as it shifts. And being able to ground anything we're receiving in the body is essential. Carry on.
Yes. It's absolutely essential, and a piece that gets missed. And so then we feel like we're constantly in ascension symptoms and all of this chaos stuff. And that to me it's a beautiful place to be. And it's a message that more in the body, get more in the body. So as the energy stream in, as the vision comes in, there's a place for it to land and be rooted, and then actually ripple out into the physical world and do the work that it's meant to do in like gridding the planet. Like it has to be physical. It has to be soma. It has to be Gaia. It has to be in the earth and in the soil. So that's a large part of the role that I played as we were going along, of pulling those threads into what the physical matter was going to look like. And as I was thinking about this, there was a few pieces I was thinking about this morning, which will segue into what Jacqueline was referring to. Number one is, as we went through this process, we very much also honored the cycling of like summer, fall, spring, winter. So there would be times where we would get on a call and it's just creation magic, right? Like it's just shooting stars and we're like, oh my gosh, this would be amazing. And we're doing all of that work, right? And then each of us separately, of course, are cycling on our own cyclical nature, but then the container also has a cycle. The container also has a cycle. It's not just in creation all the time. So we would have our winter phases where we would come in together as a group, and it was just all of, how are you and where are you? How can we support you today? What do you need from us as women? And that was the entirety of the call. So we weren't just week after week coming in and forcing creation. We were allowing really whatever the energy of the call was meant to have to be. Even if we had things on the agenda, even if we had tasks that we needed to get to, we would just know instinctively that this was like a winter call. We didn't call it that, but now I'm like looking back at it and very clearly seeing what was happening. And for all of us to honor those cycles, even if we didn't even really understand why. It's like, we have 5,000 things to do today. Why are we talking about how we're doing? We just went in and honored it. And we would typically come around at the end and say, okay, is there any few agenda items that we really absolutely need to touch on today? And that's all we did. And we let the rest be, because we knew like there's time in between. We don't have to get it all done right now. What was so important was to honor that cycle that we were in the moment in those calls. And I think that is part of what really helped the container stay so strong, is that we didn't blow it out by being in creation all the time. And what most women don't understand is that is a really good way to blow out your nervous system and to blow out your health, your mental, physical, emotion, spiritual, whatever it is, by being in summer all the time and never going into fall and winter. Like those are
You just
critical
described the
components.
corporate process.
Yes,
You
I
just
did.
described the business world where there it is all creation all the time and very little allowed for anything else.
Yes,
That was a
it's
whole new
all
way of
creation
doing
all the
business.
time. Yes. And that's another piece of the puzzle. I don't know that we need to necessarily go into here, but I was really thinking about this morning from a post, a woman that I follow, her name's Juliet Tang, and she's brilliant. And she was talking about essentially how things are set up for women, that they do not honor the cycle. They do not honor the spring, summer, winter. And so exactly like you just said earlier, it's corporate, you're always in growth, right? It's always push the growth. And as women, we are not designed to be there all the time. Very specifically, we have so much fluctuation in who we are that if we try to operate there, things collapse because our systems aren't designed to hold growth constantly. It's like our body is not designed to just keep growing a baby. Like we just keep growing the baby and we never have the baby. So our body is not designed to do that. So at some point you have to birth the baby and then you have the next season that follows that, where it's not growth season, it's nurturing and coming in and introspective and internal. And so we really honored that through the course of this, which was a really amazing thing to be a part of, especially now in hindsight, looking at that. Did you have something, Jacqueline? I see you moving. Yes.
This is the beauty of having your women. I just want to drop in for those who are listening and watching to put in perspective as Amy is speaking to the beauty of us being able to come in each time we were meeting and also be women. This is amongst booking a venue, booking a caterer, having entertainment, like plans are still happening. This isn't the airy fairy, yes, we want to do the thing and it will all be provided. We were measuring and we were balancing, as we still do, the action with the softness, with the ability to be with our women, with allowing one woman or more to come in and just lay herself down in the center of the other three and be held and be loved. Nobody felt that as a weight or an inconvenience. And we also didn't get lost in always having to process. We were moving, deepening, moving, deepening. This was happening. So I just want to add that for the richness of context, Amy, as you speak. And before I hand it back over, the brilliance of Amy Gernot in knowing this piece of you have to have a foundation. And Amy, I think you and I had this conversation last year where you said, I'm an architect. Like I see my energy and I am an architect. I build and I understand how you create that structure from the root up. And that, for me especially, and the other ladies can speak, is such an extraordinary gift. I'm so much of a visionary and the creative juice and all of the possibilities. So to have a woman, a team of women, and specifically in relation to you and your gifts and who you are, who could not become overwhelmed by that and basically go, okay, yes, now here are the pieces we'll need to get in place, is such a gift to me. And all three of you do that in a beautiful partnership and complement to my approach, that it helps me. I wrote down, and I'll finish with this and hand it back. Studying with Carolyn Mace 20 years ago, she was teaching, you must become the mystic without a monastery. No longer are we going to hide ourselves away in seclusion from the physical reality. And your gifts for the mystic in me, and I know the mystic in you, you have this earthy body connection that assists with bringing the mystical into the mundane. And I so love and appreciate that.
Thank you.
Now talk about the thing.
Okay. Jen, did you have something? I saw the pen come up. Did you have something before I go?
I just was loving I felt like, if I'm in retrospect, I was a lot of like asking the question, because I'm building these assets, right? I'm asking the open-ended question. Jacqueline and Arlia, both with each their own experiences and holding space for women, informing a lot of what we're doing. And then I see Amy coming in to refine. Like she's like the closer if I'm the opener. And it's such a beautiful cohesion I was seeing just now. But I also know, Amy, that what you're about to share is a lot about how you work also on the front end. And so anyway, I will pass it back to you now.
Yes, my friends who feel they have like ADD, ADHD, like they bounce all over the place. I always tell them, like, you just be you, because I can track you. Like, you can bounce like 5 different places in one sentence, and I know exactly where to bring you back to. Like, it's just an easy gift that I have, because I know not everybody feels that way when they talk to someone who bounces and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, if we spend an hour and you're going in 5 different circles, I know exactly where you are. So it's all good. I know how to bring you back home. So yes, it's a beautiful gift to have. So the event was in July. I can't believe it was actually that long ago at this point. The event's in July. So we're like mid-process, right? Like, we're in the middle. We are still moving with the gala. We have not decided to move in our different direction, which I know we'll get to at some point here. In the middle of this, it's July. I live in Houston, Texas. Go ahead, Jacqueline. I see you.
Thank you. Thank you. And in the middle of July, when the event comes, the subtle little threads of this is interesting in our gala conversations are just barely breathing. So to keep our finger on the pulse as you share the event, it's all connected.
And to be clear, we're not talking about the gala. This is an event in Amy's life, which is a shift. Go ahead.
Yes, this is me personally in the middle of all of our planning and work that we're doing. So in July, I'm in Houston. We have Hurricane Beryl, I think like July 8th. Any hurricane is a significant event, and we have chickens. And I was out in the middle of the storm taking care of chickens. And this is leading up to the event. This is actually an important piece. So I'm now in the hurricane with like 90-mile-an-hour winds, like getting chickens out of their pen that got stripped into a pen that was like, okay. And then that pen tips over in the wind, and I get them into another like location. It's a whole thing. So there was a lot of intensity. And if you've never been in a hurricane, it's the intensity that doesn't stop that makes it so stressful. And I'm talking outside of being in an area where you're in a real heavy flood zone, like really big storm surge. We were not in that area, and this storm was not expected to have heavy storm surge in where I live. But it was 90-mile-an-hour winds and gusts for hours on end. And it's relentless. And the feeling of that, and the feeling of it in your home, the relentless like bam it's very stressful. And so taking care of chickens, we had a very large metal building, 20 by 30 building that collapsed in the process of this, I was watching out the back door, filming the wind, and I see in the background just the lift of the roof, and it's just boom. And I was like, oh, honey, I said, the roof is going. The roof on the shed is going. And we watched it collapse in, and then we watched it get picked up and the metal get bent and wrapped around our other small shed that was next to it, and just praying to God that it did not get released into the neighbor's house. I'm in a little bit in the country, but we're close enough to where that would have been impactful. So we have this whole event happen. It's stressful. We were okay. The animals were all okay. Our home was okay, minor damage. So we go through this a week of we had generators, so we were okay. No electricity, no running water, because we're on well water. So it was a very upheavaling event. And I always look at going through a storm, I've been through 3 since I've been here, as the upheaval of it has a lot to say on the other side. There are things to look at. And I understand this now after the third one, because the other 2 had significant events happen after it I will not go into. So about 2 weeks later, I wake up in the morning, getting ready for work, go to log into my Facebook account, and I'm logged out. And I'm like, well, that's weird. I had just updated my account like 3-4 days earlier. New passwords, the whole 9 yards, just updated everything. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go reset and do the whole reset process. And the reset process doesn't work. And then the reset process doesn't work. And an hour later, I'm messaging my honey, like, are you having issues with Facebook like we did in May or whatever it was, where like the great catastrophic Facebook failure of 2024 happened? And he says no. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so he was able to go and see my account. It was still there, but I could not access it. And I messaged Arlia maybe a couple hours after this, because the realization was setting in that this is bad. This is an account I've had since 2007. And specifically over the last 6 years of moving from, I was mostly in-person practice from like 2015 to 2018. And in 2018, I started going into the online world. And so I'd been working for 6 years on this account, just curating it and cultivating it and nurturing it and growing it and creating a space. And at this point, I was actually, the night before this happened, telling Roger, my honey, that about this program that I'm launching, all the pieces are in place. I'm ready to go. I messaged Arlia and I was like, I think my account's been hacked and I think it's gone. And I told her everything that happened, what I had tried to do to correct it and reclaim it. And she also has had this happen. And she messaged me back and she was like, yeah, there's nothing you can do. That you have exhausted all the things that I did. I don't have any other points to give you to try to do it. I think it's probably gone. Something like that. And I just lost it. Like, just the grief and the overwhelm of losing something like that in an instant was just devastating in the moment. It was just absolutely devastating. And like this whole entire thing that I had built to launch, to birth, like spending all of the creative time to birth something, it's all ready to go for a specific audience that I have cultivated. And it's all gone. So not just the account is gone and the people that I was connected to, even what I had been about to birth was gone, because it was specifically for what I had already created. And the overwhelm of that, and to just the disorientation, Arlia and I talked about just being very disoriented, of like, I don't even know what to do right now. I don't know what to do. I don't know what direction to go. I feel like upside down and sideways, and I don't know. And I don't remember, did we get on a call, or was I just talking to you all separately? This is how disoriented I was. I honestly don't remember. I don't remember if we had been on a call and I told all of you, or I just messaged you all separately. I think I messaged you all separately. And number one, to have these women there to just like, we've got you. What do you need? Like really, truly, like just let it, like, what do you need? How can we support you? Like, just, do you need to just get on the phone and cry? Like, we're here, whatever you need. And not to try to fix it, not to try to tell me what to do, not to try to insert something, but just, we're here. We are here for you. And over the course of like 4 or 5 days before I was settled enough in my system, this took a couple of months really to work through the grief of that big of a loss, because it was a very big loss. Like, I know it for some people, like, it's just a Facebook page. No, this was not just a Facebook page. This was an integral part of my business. I see you, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Following, right? This is following, though, destruction and upheaval and chaos of the hurricane, and the back to back of these things in your world.
Yes.
Of course, the evolution, which I'm going to let you speak to, but in the moment of the devastation of it, the devastation of, although you didn't lose your home, the internal stability now is rocked, is shattered. The all of structure that you had in place has now become dismantled, right? So that's the state of energy, of tenderness in your heart, of exposure to all the elements in the field, on the planet. All of this is happening at one time. So I want to really land. Yes, the Facebook thing is big for a businesswoman who has cultivated, and the entirety of the cycle and the season you were in as a woman overall was profound.
Yes, it was. And so I'm in this place now of like, I'm a builder, I'm an architect. What's the new foundation? And very simply, the new foundation was start a new Facebook page and let go of what I was launching and slow way down. And I think I mentioned in a comment to you, Jacqueline, that slowing down has been one of the most life-changing things. Like, and I work with slow, right? Like, I work with slow medicine. Bodies move slower than we want them to. So I work with slow medicine. So this was a slowing down, zooming out, just being, not trying to recreate anything other than putting the Facebook page up. That's the only thing I did. I didn't recreate any new programs. I didn't start anything. I just put a new home in place and slowed down. And what it ended up doing for me was looking at all of the things that I had been working on up to that point. My computer just did something weird and popped up a screen. Of course. So hopefully you can still see me okay, because right now I can't see you because it just popped up a screen. Okay. So in slowing down, looking at all the places where I was rushing to do things, where I was like, I have in that, like we're talking about the summer, got to create, got to be constantly going, got to be constantly moving, got to be constantly putting stuff out that I had been in. It was all of that was dismantled. The ability to even do that, the audience to do that was gone. I couldn't just put something out because the audience was no longer there. So I had to slow way down and say, okay, what is the one next step? Like the Facebook page. Okay, that's done. Then I had to just sit. Like I wasn't doing nothing, but I had to just be with the entire process and allow all of the things to come up that weren't actually congruent, that I was forcing through and pushing through out of that feeling that I have to do this to completion which I think is a theme here of what does that actually mean? So if I do something to completion, like with the gala, does that mean that the gala has to happen, or is the completion actually a totally different point than we think it is? And that we think completion is only the manifestation of that big physical thing. But the completion for me was, we need to wipe away what you have built because it's not congruent with what you're here to build. And you're not listening. So we're going to just make a clean cut for you.
I want to
And
put
start
a
over.
point. I want to put a point in here because it's not congruent at the moment.
Yeah.
But it was congruent when it came through you.
Mhm. Yes.
Likely it was. And that's
Yes.
because it can change.
It can change. And the allowance and the acceptance of something to change. And like Jen said, not truly not being attached to it having to be that way. And that's a hard thing, especially when it's something that is like your baby. It's near and dear to your heart. That's a very challenging thing. And partly realizing that the non-attachment is because some of this is not for me. It's for who it's being built for, as well as being for me as far as what I'm here to do. But I think the larger thing for me was the biggest piece that came out of it was really the slowing down. The slowing down, allowing the actual seasons and the actual cycles to happen. And what is the one next step? And what is the one next step? And just building the new foundation, which now there are pieces that are in place that will support me for years to come, which that was not in place before. So it allowed me to see some things that I needed structurally and foundationally in order to truly land what I'm doing here and being able to even more fully support and engage in containers like this, because those foundations are now settling in. And I am more settled where I am, even though things aren't where I had expected them to be at this point with what I was building. I am settled in where I am and can just move that one step at a time and be in full acceptance of exactly where I am right now and keep building, because that's what I do. I build. But building doesn't have to be throwing something up really fast. It's the digging out the soil, the laying of the rebar, the pouring of the concrete, letting that settle, concrete settles, allowing it all to settle in before the walls come up and before the decor comes in and before you have the finished product of something beautiful that you now get to fully be at home in. All of those pieces, and they're challenging and they take time, but the end result is your dream home. And it's all worth it.
Beautiful. And that theme of foundation will come up again. So it's July and Amy's gone through this process and things start shifting for the gala. Jacqueline, you want to speak to that? Because everybody's like, okay, but it didn't happen. So what happened? Are we getting there?
We're laying the foundation.
That's right. We're taking it slow.
That's right. We're building, friends. So as this is happening for Amy, simultaneously, we've looked at venues, we've settled on a venue, we're starting now to build out next pieces. But what we deeply understood a baby bit at first was the land where we would gather mattered. And we were sourcing where the accommodations would be for women who traveled in to our location, which was going to be down in Florida. So that also mattered, the environment in which we were setting the stage, creating this experience for women. And we kept hearing and sensing the land. There's something about the land, which evolved into where and how a woman lands in her own body. And a next expression, which is, how are we landing this? That became the pivotal, deeper inquiry. How are we landing this? And Amy then goes through this experience literally on her land. First of all, on her physical land. The hurricane impacts the land, the nature of her life on the land. Arlia is having experience, as I recall, it at her home with building a relationship to the land and beginning to really bring through this beautiful medicine of working with plants and growing her own food and expanding what was true on the land where her home is. Jennifer, I don't remember specifically how the land piece came for you, so I'm going to have you speak to that in just a moment. For me, George and I are in transition and pieces are still moving. I always see like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with Mike TV, and in the original movie, like all of his pieces are in the air until he gets broadcast on the TV. So for George and I, these filament pieces of our life and where our land is and what's happening on our land in Maine. And I'm deep in the ancestral roots of the people and the land where they lived in New England. So for all four of us, an intimacy with the land is happening. The other metaphor in Amy's experience is, what is the state of the land upon which her business is built? And I agree with Arlia that it was incongruence. And I also feel in the middle of this summer, a massive shift in energy, in consciousness landed on this planet. And it landed in such a way that we were now arriving to our council meetings, and now we're talking about the land and asking again, what are we landing here? And in the process of that inquiry, it's like the light bulb went on. We're building a gala on a foundation that actually doesn't exist. We began to understand, not we're fluffy and we're building castles in the air, but that the spirit of tapestry was asking for something different. Once the shift happened on the planet, coming into those meetings, those beautiful, I say meetings, but it felt more like gathering in a living room or around the kitchen table. What became evident was that now taking steps to birth a gala began to feel dense. It began to have a density because what had landed for us was, we're going to actually pull that thread through to tapestry is in transition. And she's asking for a very different foundation and expression. And that was popping up in the lives of all four women. And without it being hard or harsh or a lot of conflict, each woman intuitively began to sense, oh boy, We're on a different landscape now. And we began to understand that if we were going to have the gala, at that pivot point, it would require force feeding the next movements. And we were unwilling to dance with that energy. We were very clear, and it wasn't the movement from, okay, ladies, something is very different here. The movement and the flow has shifted. And from the point of each woman sensing that, and it happened differently for each woman. We are unique women. So how it came through amongst and then between us looked different for every woman. But every woman, I feel, and I would love each of you to speak your own experience of reality. For me, energetically, it was as though the brakes were pressed to the floor all of a sudden. And they were not my brakes. They were, if we stay with the language of the spirit of tapestry, they were the brakes coming through tapestry, quietly whispering, this is not what I want. This is not what's next. There were the brakes, and I don't think that's necessarily the exact metaphor, but there was a shift in the feminine consciousness that Amy experienced her way. For me, was a very different way in relationship to the land. The details in this moment do not matter. It just landed all of a sudden, crystal clear. We need to step back. First, it was, we just need to step back and we have some decisions to make. We have decisions to make. We have structures in place. But we were being called to tend to something different. We were being called. Tapestry has a beautiful Facebook community of over 300 women. We were being called to become more intimate with that. And much like Amy's Facebook experience, it was almost like a letting go of what tapestry had been, of how we were shepherding the space, and then listening to what tapestry is evolving into and how we now tend and nurture these new seeds of conception at the micro level. The gala was the extraordinary, and we were being asked to almost, if you hit rewind and watched it all sort of go back in the box and return to the point of origin and refine from there. So that's what I would begin as the thread of introduction to. Maybe there is no gala. That's where we found ourselves. Maybe there is no gala. And I imagine for every woman, certainly for me, there was a moment of, oh, fuck, what have we done? What does this mean? Can we back up? And that landed and bounced out. It became, we are in service to this energy and to this whispering, and it doesn't have to make sense. And we actually don't have to like it. We don't have to get it. But for all four of us, it was crystal clear. We do have to listen to it. And we do have to answer. Here's where the mystical matters. Because this was absolutely a divinely orchestrated creation and release. I believe we birthed the baby. We birthed the baby. We thought the baby was the gala. But the baby was, okay, consciousness has shifted. Women, I need you to be able to pivot into the unknown, blind in the feminine void of new creation, and I need you to trust it. And it was not hard for us. Ironically, like, we didn't have angst, we didn't suffer, we didn't labor, we didn't object. We may have for a minute been like confounded. What do you mean? But we pivoted, we listened, we answered. And Tapestry has her own voice and energy. And she's on lead. And we allowed that.
Absolutely. For me, it was, I was tracking it and I could feel it and I could feel the shift. And you said we didn't have angst. I had some angst. Angst was there. But, I want to call that out because that's a very real human experience of the confusion of what the heck is going on, not what language I would actually use, to experience all of that at the moment, to see the energy shifting and the ego and the brain going, that sense of disorientation of suddenly this structure either will not hold, is no longer supported. Oh, there's actually not a foundation here on which this structure can thrive or survive. And so it was disorienting and there was angst and yet my finger was on the pulse of, but this is where it's headed. There's a quote I heard recently from the musician Esmeralda Spalding. She was in collaboration with this, I forget his name, but this elder musician who now lives out of country, and she really wanted to honor him. So she flew to his home and they created this album together with some other people. And at the end of the interview, she said, "I'm just so grateful for this. I just serve the music." Serve the music. That's what all of this is about. I actually have that quote on my wall now because that's what it is for me. That's the most perfect metaphor for me of the way intuition and the spirit and the divine leads is serving the music, because it can shift on a dime and our human brains may not and don't really need to understand if we are in service to the music or the spirit of Tapestry. Jennifer Lauren, I have a feeling you're just ready to speak. What do you want to say?
You know me. I have a bad habit of interrupting, but I feel like I've done well today.
You have.
I am reminded as Amy was going through her hurricane, and I also know, like, for me, a lot of this is a non-linear journey anyway. And as even Jacqueline and I have recently discussed, I'm ahead, like, of time often. And so actually, when this whole conversation around the land was happening, it started for me in June because I had traveled to Tahoe and I was engaged in San Francisco. And when I returned home, right around the time all of this catastrophe was happening with the land, I actually was searching for a venue for my wedding. And in the search, it was like the obvious thing to do is look up wedding venues. So I'm looking at wedding venues and I'm just feeling similarly to this vision that we're countering in the gala is like, this feels very corporate. It feels like super, it's just not my vibe. Like, I want something that feels human and raw and earthy and grounded. Like, I want my wedding to feel like a family reunion. And pardon my internet, it keeps like interrupting me. But ultimately, I found a venue that, like, at the time I was like, I'm really thinking I might just do this in my backyard. And then realizing, like, through some mutual connections, I found a woman who lives about 10 minutes down the road from me, and her backyard is like 2 acres, beautiful with a pond. It's an unofficial wedding venue. Like, she's not selling it like a wedding venue on the website or whatever. And so it just gave me this sense of, I don't want to say exclusivity in this like way that we often think of it as superior, but it was exclusive in that the land also agreed and chose me. And so I think what Amy's getting to is in part, like, it's not just about forcing you back into your own body and in connection with the land. It's also in that land receiving you and calling back. It's a relationship. And in the mindset of it, like, I love what you're talking about, Jacqueline, because it's so much of what it looks like from the outside versus what the actual internal process is. And I know from the outside, we were all like, how do we tell the people we're not doing this anymore? And then do we just not say anything? And it was like not wanting to avoid it and not wanting to dishonor all the work we've done. And having to come to some space of like I know for me, I was like, okay, well, I'm ready to kill this. Can we take down the website? Can we do all I mean, I'm very about giving things their proper ends, and in some ways, a funeral, in some cases, burn it down. But ultimately, what this came down to for me, and I think the message that really like sank in with the landing of it, is one, surrender and win, which is something that has echoed for the last decade or so for me through a close friend and shaman. And then making room for the chaotic, wild, great mystery. Like, as much as we might want to inflict control and try to certainty and even portray to the outward audience, oh, we know exactly what we're doing. There is a degree of that surrender that also becomes the relationship with the land. Like, it is a secret, whether it's exclusive in a superior sense, not so much, but it's definitely this conversation I think each of us were having with the land in our own worlds, as you're saying, as to how this wants to come through each of us. And again, I do think you're right, Jacqueline, that a lot of what we've birthed here is actually the foundation, these 4 pillars, these 4 women, and how it is that we decide to work together and move forward. This was almost really good practice, basically. I think we nailed it. And anyway, that's, just what's been itching to come through, I think, for the last little bit. Is it was such a stark difference, my experience from Amy's, and even from yours, Jacqueline and Arlia. Talk about different phases of our life and still how that message is cooperating between all 4 of us.
There are 2 magics, and I would even say 3, as I've just listened to all 3 of you. And Amy, I wrote down for you the grace you were able to hold in the midst of the chaos. And you were speaking about being a slow coach. And I have written down as well from The Peaceful Warrior and Socrates saying to Dan Millman, go sit on that car. What am I supposed to do on that car? There's nothing going on out here. I don't know what you want from me. And Socrates replying, look at that over there. Do you hear that bird singing? There's never nothing going on. And I felt that in the grace of your words. And yes, there was angst. And I remember the feelings of angst. But when I spoke that there wasn't angst, there wasn't this chaos and disruption, acknowledging that you felt some, there was also this beautiful innocence of being willing to trust, even though almost very childlike. I don't get it. I don't like it. This is not how I wanted it to go. And you were never having a tantrum. I'm being dramatic for effect. But the woman in you, the purity in you, I'm very disappointed. I really wanted this to happen. And I wanted to be in a space with the three of you, like all of us, co-creating. And yet there was this beautiful, and I trust. I don't like it. I don't get it. It's unnerving to me and very disruptive, but I trust. And I appreciate that you spoke to the angst, because I would never want to speak that for another woman. And Jen, to what you were just talking about, I watched you, and it really was the four of us. And I know for you, it probably was the biggest challenge, because you are such a mover and so creative. There's a thing to be done, you do it. And you wanted to close the loop. Like, you literally came and said, I feel like this has not completed and we need to close the loop. And the three of us were very, no, there's not
That's
anything
nice.
to, yeah, there's not anything to say. And we've known for probably 3 months that this conversation was coming. And all of us together have held the tension of birthing the new. And when a mother is in those final stages, and she knows it's not long before that baby comes, but she doesn't know when the baby is coming. She's uncomfortable. She's probably in some manner of chaos. There's probably a little bit of a child, I'm sick of this. I don't like it. My world is about to change and everything has been devastated. And we held the point of the tapestry pulse. Because this right here, my women, this is our baby. This is our baby. We knew this birthing of the speaking of what has been taboo and hidden and hushed and buried beneath shame and performance and presentation. We knew this moment was coming, when we would be fully transparent, and in a manner of speaking, all would be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have held this energy within our body, which in this moment just reminded me I'm doing a live recorded reading of the 7 sacred rites of menopause. And it's profound. And I just read the 6th rite, which is holding the blood within. We have just done that. We have held the richness and the luster and the life-giving energy of this feminine blood that is meant to be birthed and spilled on the planet. We have held it within and allowed ourselves to be nourished by it and to become more of who we are, each in our own foundation, until the time for the birthing was here. And I celebrate deeply each one of you in your ability, in your grace, in your stamina, and in your innocence in doing that. Because this is the baby. This is the foundation. We didn't know what it looked like. We didn't know where it was going. But we knew we had to honor the death. And we have. And we do. And the birthing is here.
And so, my friends, there's no simple, easy answer to why it didn't happen, except that it didn't. Here we are. we are serving the music, as I say, and it shifted. The key changed, something like that. The time signature changed, and we were all really having our finger on the pulse of our own life and the energy of Tapestry. I don't think there's much else to say. I would love to invite all of you to have some closing thoughts about where you are now and how you feel about it. Let's start with you, Amy.
So yeah, I'm like, okay, we're complete. Thank you, Jacqueline. It's when it first started happening for me, the feeling of it was like we had this, like if you're weaving something, it's like hooked onto something, like the thread is hooked onto something. And so it was like hooked on, and then it was just like, it was released. And it just felt like it, for me, it felt like the gala floated over here and I could just see it over there. And it was just hanging out, waiting for us to choose which way we're going. And now in hindsight, of course, looking at the entire process and what was coming to me, I think as Jen was talking, I don't know what you even said that reminded me of this. In the very beginning of our conversations, we were talking about this being an initiation for the women coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now I understand.
We are the initiation.
This is the initiation. Well done, ladies. You passed the initiation for the landing of the energy of Tapestry and the foundation that will now be built on that energy. And if we had not held the tension, stayed the course, made the pivot, had a huge thing about it, the next steps wouldn't be available. They wouldn't be available. And the beauty of recognizing, holding through this entire process, going through our own initiation, which is actually what it was, and now being gifted the opportunity to build Tapestry, because that's really what it is. It's a gift to be able to build this out and whatever it is going to become, and a gift to be able to do it with these women.
Jennifer.
Oh, goodness. Where I'm at now. I mean, I think I'm still as enthusiastic and intentional. And interestingly, more recent developments, especially through work that I've done ancestrally, death has come back for me. So there is something to be said about the honoring of what has come to pass and the end and the beginning of something, like the transitionary stage, right? And I will say, like, I have not always been, I guess, well practiced in the art of graceful release and letting go. But I feel like truly part of the beauty that comes from this experience is that when you're in collaboration with women, as women, there's already just a deep reverence and honoring of each our own processes and how we do things, and being reminded what is mine and what I'm able to take agency to do for myself with my own need has I think been the biggest echo of this result, is that there's not necessarily a hierarchy. There's nothing to prove. And I think, if I'm being honest, I'm also sensing on a very like earthbound level, there's a new economy resulting from this. And I can't really materialize it in the moment aside from saying that, but I feel very strongly that what we are capable of, the four of us, and I believe it to be possible for other women, is certainly revealing new ways of creating and co-creating, and especially in alignment with, as Amy has shared extensively about, in alignment with the cycles of what it means to be a woman, and truly honoring all of that independently and collectively. So it sounds really complex and complicated, and somehow we made it look like really, and feel honestly, really easy and gentle. And that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Losing my train of thought. The sisterhood has been a theme of my work and my life for years. And so this container is and has been a real, well, it's been a beautiful example of what it looks like. And we've all practiced what it looks like to be in deep sisterhood and collaboration and serving the spirit of whatever we are bringing through. And it has been an initiation into deeply holding that energy and working in that way, and then serving something greater than ourselves, something greater than the sum of our parts. As we were talking in the very beginning about coming to our time together and being able to release an agenda, and if someone was in motion and wanted support, we responded to that. I was thinking that when that happens, when you serve what's in front of you, it naturally leads you back to where you actually need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there have been numerous times Jacqueline and I would start a conversation just sharing our hearts, and we see the thread, and the thread appears, and then this direction appears. And I don't know that we ever would have found it if we just hadn't started where we are, which is what this whole process has been for us. We started where we are. We start with what's given to us in the moment. And following that thread is the grace, is the trust, is the surrender. Because when you do that, you don't get to where it's leading you. You're always being led somewhere. And whether you can understand it or comprehend it or not, it's not the point. It's being able to get out of your own way to follow that thread. And so I'm just going to put a pin in it there. That's what I've seen through this entire process. And let me tell you, my little kid was there too. Like, I don't understand this. Doesn't make sense. I'm not happy about this. And to allow her to have her little temper tantrum in the background, like it's okay. It's all right. We don't exactly know where this is going, but we're doing the next right thing. And we're honoring that. And that always puts us in the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're following the next right thing. So for me personally, that was just the compelling lesson from all of this that drove me to say, it's time that we talk about this publicly, because it's not common, and it's certainly not common in the realm of planning something enormous and with lots of glitz and lots of publicity, and then it just disappears. Like a genie, just disappears. So to humanize our process and to also highlight the reverence of the process of the feminine flow of creation. It's a very real world example of what it has been to follow the next right step and then surrender over and over again to what's coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Despite our protests in the background. And to love that piece of ourselves that doesn't understand. And also to be safe in our lack of understanding. Because we are grounded in the in the trust of what we're following.
Mm-hmm.
So Jacqueline, I will let you close us out with your final thoughts and where you feel and where you think Tapestry is going with this new foundation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. And my first thought is, of course, that little girl gets a voice.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't she be disappointed? She had a play date.
Right.
Some of her favorite people, and it's not happening. So fair. Hi, love you. First, I will say for me, and you hear it echoed in these women, this experience partnered with the energy of this year, the experience of my life and my woman, has really anchored in, all three women have mentioned it, the feminine cycle of creation, whether that is in our relationship, whether that is in our body, in our business, in our creativity, it doesn't matter. There are cycles and seasons. And had any one of us held this gala so tightly that it meant we had to see it through because that's what you do, we would have crushed it. Like destroyed, crushed it, not nailed it. We would have crushed it like the most beautiful, delicate flower that was sitting here in our space, emanating gorgeous fragrance and beauty and love and feminine essence every time you walk in the room. Business women can still and will be more effective in bringing through our medicine when we do so landed in our body, landed in our medicine, and understanding how we land that on the planet, which speaks to all of what has been discussed here, from tools like AI to what is happening in our personal life, to allowing real raw emotion, to the ability to hold the tension in the darkness. All of this is foundational to feminine creation and artistry. And that is the spirit of Tapestry. And the foundation we now have laid is an embodied in the body, right? If we forced that gala through the tiny pinhole, we would have done so outside of our bodies. From the outside looking in, hello, Kali, get in your body. We all got in our bodies. That's your superpower as a woman. That's your foundation. All of us this year, as I have watched, not only have given Tapestry foundation, each one of us has deepened into our woman, which then becomes the unique blueprint, signature, foundation, build of what we are for. Tapestry is beginning to whisper new pieces to us. We are not yet ready to reveal them. And we are also landing them within ourselves and upon the land, the energetic land, as we cultivate it, that is Tapestry. The purpose of this gathering was not to unveil something new. Much like Jen said, it's to honor the life and the breath and the death of an old paradigm for how women believed we had to do it. The new will be here soon enough. We are actively listening and building, and when the time is right, we'll be back. There's more in 2025, but for now, the gift we leave you with is connect with your women as the woman you are. Trust even when you don't know. Allow the unraveling. and just let it all unfold. Simple. It's very simple. And I will add, these are extraordinary women. You heard each of them, each of us speak our medicine. Tapestry is the music, and if you're listening, you're connected to tapestry. And your harmonics are in the melody being played. And we are in service to that. You are welcome to reach out to us. You are welcome to ask us questions. You are welcome to connect with any of these women around the beautiful medicine and service they bring into this world. This is what we are for. Biggest love to all of you. Thank you for your presence with us also. It's a gift to share this and an honor. And thank you, Arlia. You are an extraordinary host and facilitator. And those are simple words. But you have a depth of holding women that we need in this world. So thank you. Thank you, Amy, for teaching me over and over again how to slow down. And Jennifer Lauren, thank you for letting me be the woman who says no so graciously. I love you all deeply. Thank you.
That does it for us today. Thank you for being here with us. We'll see you here again next time on the Tapestry Feminine Collective Podcast. Thank you for joining us. Visit tapestryfemininecollective.com for more information about events and all our podcast episodes. We'll see you soon.